Mrs. Twit goes ballooning up. "There's enough pull here to take me to the moon," Mrs. Twit cried out. "To take you to the moon?" exclaimed Mr. Twit. "What a ghastly thought. We wouldn't want anything like that to happen, would we? Oh dear me, no." "We most certainly would not," cried Mrs. Twit. "Put some more string round my ankles quickly. I want to feel absolutely safe." "Very well, my angel," said Mr. Twit, and with a ghoulish grin on his lips he knelt down at her feet. He took a knife from his pocket and with one quick slash he cut through the strings holding Mrs. Twit's ankles to the iron ring. She went up like a rocket. "Help!" she screamed. "Save me!" But there was no saving her now. In a few seconds she was high up in the blue sky and climbing fast. Mr. Twit stood below looking up. "What a pretty sight," he said to himself. "How lovely all those balloons look in the sky, and what a marvellous bit of luck for me. At last the old hag is lost and gone for ever." Mrs. Twit comes ballooning down. Mrs. Twit may have been ugly and she may have been beastly, but she was not stupid. High up there in the sky she had a bright idea. "If I can get rid of some of these balloons, I'll stop going up and I'll start coming down," she thought to herself. She began biting through the strings that held the balloons to her wrists and her arms and her neck and her hair. Each time she bit through a string and let the balloon float away, the upward pull got less and her rate of climb slowed. When she'd bitten through 20 strings, she stopped going up altogether. She stayed still in the air. She bit through one more string. Very, very slowly she began to float downwards. It was a calm day. There was no wind at all, and because of this Mrs. Twit had gone absolutely straight up. She now began to come absolutely straight down. As she gently floated down, Mrs. Twit's petticoat billowed out like a parachute, showing her long knickers. It was a grand sight on a glorious day, and thousands of birds came flying in from miles around to stare at this extraordinary woman in the sky. Mr. Twit gets a horrid shock. Mr. Twit, who thought he'd seen his ugly wife for the last time, was sitting in the garden celebrating with a mug of beer. Silently, Mrs. Twit came floating down. When she was about the height of the house above Mr. Twit, she suddenly called at the top of her voice, "Here I come, you grisly old grunion, you rotten old turnip, you filthy old frumpet." Mr. Twit jumped as though he'd been stung by a giant wasp. He dropped his beer, he looked up, he gasped, he gaped, he gurgled. A few choking sounds came out of his mouth. "I'll get you for this," shouted Mrs. Twit. She was floating right down on top of him. She was purple with rage and slashing the air with her long walking stick, which she had somehow managed to hang on to all the time. "I'll swish you to a swazzle," she shouted. "I'll swash you to a swizzle. I'll nash you to a nozzle. I'll nosh you to a nazzle." And before Mr. Twit had time to run away, this bundle of balloons and petticoats and a fiery fury landed right on top of him, lashing out with the stick and cracking him all over his body.